Welcome to the Threshing Floor Podcast, your premier destination for discussion and commentary on the Redemption trading card game and its community. Kick back and relax as we catch you up on the latest news, tournament results, and deck building strategies to take your game to the next level. Now, here are your hosts, John Hendricks and Ager the Wise.
Yep, that's us. We're here.
Yeah. Let's go.
We're definitely here. As long as that's a step one that we can all agree on, and being here, we can achieve that so we have a certain level of success off the bat. Now, everything else is just, shooting for, shoot for the moon and fall among the stars. We'll see if we can get something to stick on the wall.
Some of those glowy stars.
Yeah. This is our first recording in a little while. We recorded one and we were talking about how we were all excited about getting back into it. And then we had a little drop off here, but that was because I was organizing the Christmas card swap, and it seemed like it was easier just to kind of postpone recording and handle other things and then circle back to it when we can jump right into it. I know we were super excited about recording last time. We're super excited about it this time. So maybe this will start the run. You got to start somewhere, right?
Here we go.
We are coming off of Christmas, a beautiful Christmas season. How was your Christmas for you and your family, Jake?
Christmas was pretty good, pretty nice, pretty fun. We were planning to go to Brazil, but didn't fit the budget this year, so we stayed in town with family. Had a lot of fun, went to do Christmas Day with some family, and just enjoyed a nice Christmas in town, and it was a lot of fun. It was a huge blessing, and it was really cool to celebrate Christ's birth with family.
Yep, always good. Now, let me potentially put myself out here to look a little ignorant. So you mentioned me, wanting to go to Brazil, and it didn't work out this year, but just curious off of that. Does Brazil, what do they celebrate as far as Christmas season as a general consensus?
Yeah, Brazil's adopted Christmas as obviously it's an American holiday. Oh, it started as an European and American holiday, but they've adopted it, and they celebrate Christmas in the middle of summer there. So they have Santa, Papai Noel. He's got his swim shorts on and his Hawaiian t-shirt, and he's handing out gifts to all the kids in the middle of summer there. So they love it. Like, obviously the seasons are flipped for North Hemisphere and South Hemisphere. So it's super hot. They're at the beach. They're having fun, but they're celebrating Christmas down there too. And mostly the same way. There's a few different traditions, but it's pretty much the same thing with just a little bit of a Brazilian flair on it.
So it's kind of like, what do they call it? Every now and then you'll see like some kind of special on like, I don't know, Hallmark, another excuse to play their bad Christmas movies. It's like Christmas in July.
Yeah. So it just looks
so
like
they really do have Christmas in July.
Yeah, Santa's got his shades on. He's got the shorts on. He's just having a lot of fun out there handing out gifts in the sand. What
kind of shorts does he have on?
I have a picture from when I went one year, and I could post in the pics to our group. But he's totally like he's a Hawaiian Santa, like imagine Santa in July just chilling on the beach resting. So like he's out there completely just enjoying life on in that sense. So
that's pretty cool. Well,
yeah.
As far as Christmas for me and my family, it was pretty awesome. Now, this year, we weren't given any real indications of what people wanted, which is always, it adds to the stress because you're going through your list of who you want to buy gifts for. And obviously gifts aren't the main part of Christmas, but they are a part of Christmas. And it's kind of annoying when you have, I want to get you something, but you've given me no indicators of whatever. So I know that for myself and my wife, just to be past that part of Christmas is awesome. But as far as like just hanging out with family, it was good getting to see all of our family. I don't usually enjoy going down to her grandmother's because I don't jive all that well with that full side of her family.
Okay.
But it was a pleasant surprise this year because it went pretty well. So I didn't have any the whole I don't know, I guess I'll go type of thing. it was a relief that once we got there, I got to sit and talk to the people that I do get along with, and I wasn't rude or anything, but I didn't have to intermingle with a lot of the ones that I don't get along with. And the most annoying thing is that they usually have a lot of food that I don't necessarily like. I don't think it's great food. And her aunts are always like, get up and fix you a plate. And I'm like, I'm not hungry. And even if I'm hungry, it's like, I don't want you most of what they have. And this year it wasn't bad. They
did best recipe.
They switched up and they went to like more finger foods and things. So it was more tolerable. Nice. So I didn't have that awkward thing to where like I'm not eating and they're mad because I'm not eating. And
exactly.
Now it makes me look like I'm just a bad person, but
you just got to say I'm fasting. Start your fast before and say, "Oh, I'm fasting. I need to fast."
Yeah, that's what I should have done. But anyway, so that was Christmas Eve, and then Christmas Day, it just rolled smoothly. There wasn't any real pain points or anything. It was just a nice, relaxing day to spend with family, and it went over well. But I do feel like I want to say something, and I want to talk about this, and don't let me run too long on it.
Okay.
But if you guys have been keeping up for the last 2 years now, I've been working on this car that I met a deer in the highway doing probably. I was speed limit's like 65, and I was going up a hill slightly.
Okay.
And I braked a little bit.
Okay.
So I didn't hit them maybe like 45, 50, somewhere like that. But this deer was standing in the middle of the 2 lanes on this highway at night.
Yeah.
I hit the brake. I pressed in the clutch and the brake at the same time and swerved towards, it was right beside a median, so I swerved toward the median. And the stupid deer took off to the same median in the same direction, so I still clipped it at the corner. Insurance totaled the car, and I've been working for 2 years to bring it back to life. And it's not really a Christmas present to myself, but kind of, because so I have Christmas here, obviously, and then my birthday is also New Year's Eve. So somewhere in there, between Christmas and my birthday now, I have gotten the car back. So we're recording this on Sunday night on the 29th. And Friday evening, I drove it from work because it had been stored at work, waiting on the inspection and things. So I got to drive it for the first time. It's licensed, it's insured, titled, all that. And it's just, I mean, I feel like that's if I were to say that was a Christmas present, that all the powers that be, having to have the state issue the stuff quickly, because I mean they did give me the title back quickly after the inspection, and then my wife tolerating me working on it for 2 years and putting money into it, all of that culmination of, I would consider that a great Christmas or birthday present, and probably the best of either one I've gotten, just because I enjoy the car so much. But that's exciting for me. So I've had a few days of being like on an emotional high here since I've gotten to drive it home. Funny enough.
That's awesome.
So Saturday night, there was potential for tornadoes. And I was, I got checked by my wife because I was pacing a little bit, and I was like, of course, it would have to have severe weather the day that I bring it, like the weekend I bring it home. I was like, man, I should have left it in the warehouse. Watch a tree fall on it or something. And she was like, so you're worried about the car, but not about us. And I was like, well, it goes without saying I'm worried about us.
I'm always worried about you, but now I have something else to worry about.
She had to check me on that. So I'll have to walk a fine line here of not being too crazy about it. But I am definitely enjoying having that back. And that is awesome. Because now, I hadn't shared this with, I don't think anyone, but last month I lost a couple of gears out of my truck. So my truck is down and it probably needs a new transmission. Whoa. So we had been being one vehicle. So it also helps because now we are back up to 2 vehicles, which if you are a 1 vehicle family, you cannot tell me there's not a greater Christmas gift than becoming a 2 vehicle family.
No, that's huge. We were 1 vehicle this year. We moved to 2 vehicles. So that's huge.
It can be rough, but anyway, that's my little spiel about a great Christmas gift, I guess.
Oh, that sounds great.
We also, in Redemption Land, if we focus on that as a community, we also had the Redemption fifth annual Christmas card swap. Now, and I do believe there's been a couple of people reach out to me, and I'll have to track down some loose ends to make sure that we have contact and confirmation from all of the people that were supposed to send cards and things. I think I might still have to reach out to a couple of people. The issue is every year I do this at work, the exchanging the names, because I set up a spreadsheet to exchange the names, and then it never fails. I don't make that accessible away from work, and then someone will ask me about it, and I have to wait till I get back to work to answer a question because that's where the file's saved at. So I'll reach out to anyone that I haven't reached out to. But you participated in the Christmas card swap. I did. How'd you experience that? Like, how did it go for you?
Redeemed Texans sent me a really cool gift, so that was awesome. I got it, and I shipped out mine a little bit late. It was supposed to arrive, I think a day ago, but it might arrive on Monday or Tuesday this week. But yeah, so it was really fun, and yeah, like. The person I got to give to is not. I wanted to give to a newbie so I could get them started on a bunch of new cards. So when you give it to somebody who already has all the cards, you're like, what else do I throw in there to sweeten the pot? Do I throw in some tokens? Do I throw in some other things that they may just want extra copies of? So definitely really cool though.
Yeah, a lot of that in the past when I've gotten someone that I feel like has an established collection, it makes you think outside the box a little bit. Not to say that someone with a smaller, not to say that someone with a smaller collection wouldn't appreciate that outside the box thinking, but you feel like you can rely on, I can wow them with cards. And then if you get someone like, let's just say you get Tyler Stevens, for example.
Exactly.
Like, how many cards are you going to wow? Exactly. This guy's the lead set designer currently.
Exactly.
So I don't know. I had him a few years ago, and this was before we had a way to make cards on the new card face, but I reached out and Gabe was willing to help me, and we printed up a Mr. Hiatus card, and I had that, printed as a picture and then framed and given to him. And I don't know how well that went over with him. I feel like he's going to say he likes it just because being, cordial about it, but I thought it was kind of a cool thing, and it was a way to step outside the box and think about, hey, how can I give him something? Mm-hmm. But I ended up signing up kind of last minute because someone reached out and wanted to join, and I had already exchanged the names. At least I don't know at that point if I had given out the name exchanges or not, but I had already done it. So I just made a 1-for-1. I signed up, they signed up, and we sent to each other, and we worked out, and I got some cards that it would benefit each of us. So it's kind of like a mutual trade, so to speak. That's awesome. But Keegan, the person that got Keegan, and I don't want to say because I'm always a little wary about sharing who gave what because I don't want anyone to feel locked into, well, last year I gave this and now a new person gets me, they're going to expect whatever I gave last year because circumstances change, feelings change. I mean, I just don't want to paint anyone. That's why I try to, on my end, keep it as anonymous as possible. And if you want to reach out and tell someone, hey, I got you, is there any gifts that or any cards that you want? If you want to do that, by all means, you can do that. But I try to refrain from that because I don't want to put any pressure on anyone to feel like, they have to match or exceed what they did last time. Mm-hmm. But Keegan received an entire box of the new set, Israel's Inheritance, which is insane.
That's amazing.
And then opening this box, the kid cracks open a foil Promised Land.
No way, dude. Let's go.
He's got the foil Promised Land. All right. And then this kind of segues into, a shout out for our sponsor of the podcast here, Your Turn Games, Andy and Kelsey Fish, and their family. But I reached out to Andy and I was like, hey, it would be really cool if, and I was thinking in my head that it would be beneficial for like booster draft for a small group instead of having to buy a box of 2 different sets. If you could get, half and half. Anything more than that, I think becomes more of like he has to keep up with things. But if I say I want half of for example, Israel's Inheritance and Cloud of Witness for Keegan a Christmas gift. And it's the first ever 50-50 box where he takes the 12 packs out of one side of Cloud of Witness and 12 packs of II, puts them into a box together. So you have half, and you lose the guarantee of an ultra rare.
Yeah.
But if you're going to open a bunch of cards that you probably already have a good bit of, you know, like Cloud of Witnesses, then I think a way to spice it up is the potential for multiple ultra rares. So technically I could get the ultra rare from the half of I and from Cloud of Witness.
Yeah.
So you don't have a guarantee, but you have the potential for cracking
It spikes the variance for sure.
Yeah. And so Keegan's opening this box Christmas after he receives it, and he pulls a foil Abishai.
What, he pulled 2 foils?
So he's got 2 foils out of 2 boxes. And I kind of want to go ahead and buy him another box just so that he can have the chance to pull the captain to complete the set. But, I mean, kid had insane luck for that. But it all started with the Christmas card swap and being blessed through that. And I know not everyone's going to receive a box, but there are, you know, people that are blessed in that way. I mean, that's not the first time that a box has been given away, and it's not...
and when we say not everyone's going to receive a box, we mean most people will not receive a box.
Well, yes, but that's the cool thing about the Christmas card swap is you never know who that wheel is going to land on, where the generosity is going to flow. And I am super blessed that it was, you know, an experience for Keegan, even more so than the actual like value of the cards or anything. The experience of getting this card, and the person that sent it to him wrapped it in like the redemption posters that you get, the little like poster pages that you get for tournaments.
Oh, that's
so it was
awesome.
like wrapped as redemption. Open it up. There's a personalized note in there, which is cool. And then out of the box, the experience of, oh, he pulled a foil, but that experience coming by way of the Christmas card swap was really cool.
That's really cool.
And then, I mean, we had an awesome time with it, getting to give away a bunch of cool prizes and things. Like we sent tokens to a bunch of people. We sent cards, rare sets, playtest sets for Persecuted Church, which I was hoping I was going to draw my name on one, but whatever.
I listened to that on the way home from work. I was like, that's funny. Like, I'm putting my name in here for these. I'm going to put it back for anything else, but I want these.
Yeah, if I could get... But then being able to reach out and share that, because not only getting to go through the thing and pull the names out, but then when you reach out to the people that are winning these prizes and you get to go and send them off, which I would just like to say that the U.S. Mail Service, U.S. Postal Service, their prices are absolutely ripoff. Like, man, to send this card in this envelope with a tracking number... Like $7 for sending off like one card seems a little ridiculous.
I think it ranges, for a tracking number, like that type of thing. It's $5 to $8 depending on how far it's going in America. Yeah,
but that's all right. Anyway, I went in there and spent like $110 to send off stuff, and that wasn't even all the stuff I was sending off. I had to go another day too, but I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that it seems like the USPS, maybe, what's that efficiency, government efficiency thing that they're setting up? They need to go and look through the postal service is all I'm saying.
That's going to make the prices higher, though. They're saying that the post office is not making enough money, so they want to raise the prices on USPS.
Okay, well then I say shut them down. Bring Joe Biden back. I'm just kidding.
Good grief.
We are off the rails here. But yeah, anyway, Christmas card swap was, by all accounts, a tremendous success. 80
Fantastic.
Unique participants this year, which is awesome. So if you didn't sign up for it, then you have a whole year to think about what you're going to do as far as your gift goes. So go ahead and just plan it throughout the year. Like that. Be ready. I'm being a little facetious. Like, no one's going to build a gift a year out, but mentally just keep it in the back of your mind.
If you buy a box every month up until Christmas, you're going to have 12 boxes to give out.
To give away the 12 boxes of Christmas.
Exactly, 12 boxes of Christmas.
Yeah. Now, let's see. The next thing I have on here I wanted to go over is just the fact that this new card designer that Daniel put out He is awesome. I've been having a ton of fun making different card designs. I even tweaked and took the design elements and made a template for horizontal or landscape fortresses, and I think they look great.
Those look amazing.
I know Renee really wants a new card type to use the horizontal thing, but
yeah,
I think we're probably a little ways away from a new card type in the game.
Yeah.
Not that I think that it's impossible or that it's not coming on the horizon at some point. I just don't think we're close enough there. But we could have a lot of beautiful fortresses in between now and then if we used it for that. That's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
The actual card designer is phenomenal. It seems like most things he's thought of. I know that there's some elements that, like multi-brigade, rainbow brigade, and like different things like that aren't necessarily available at the moment. But as far as like what is there, you can make pretty accurate card designs there. And I know that some people have shared a lot of them. And I think it's really important to have that as a tool, because a lot of card games do that and it doesn't really matter, like these card designs, but our community is so small and close knit that a cool design that comes through as hey, here's a card I created just on a whim. Well, Tyler or one of the elders could potentially see that and be like, maybe not that way, but maybe we could build it this way and we could use this idea.
100%.
And so it funnels, potentially, creative design space for the card designer so that they're not burdened with coming up with everything 100%. Maybe they could take some of these ideas and use them. And it's just a potential, I don't know, a source of inspiration, so to speak. Like we've even got the whole segment. We're not going to do it on this episode, but we've got the You're the Creator segment. And you've been, pretty vocal about a lot of card designs that you've come up with. Some of those ideas could end up leading to actual cards, and having the designer tool to be able to create an image of that. It's a lot easier for a lot of players to take in the card idea if it's got an image, if it's set up like a real card that they would get and put in a deck. It's easier to take that information in that way.
Agreed, totally. And the only reason I haven't used it yet is because it does take a little bit of setup. But Booney Tim did a really good video on what you need to do to set it up. But I'm excited to use it when I get a chance to. I just need to actually get the time to set up the program and use it. Like if this thing was an application on a website that I could do without like downloading, like I'd already been using it, but I just haven't had the time to set up myself yet. But I'm super excited because all the cards coming off it look super sweet, and you can find a good AI program, design some art for it, and it kind of helps just tie it all together. Like when you put some art on the card, it kind of gives you, this is the emotion it's trying to evoke, and it kind of ties the theme together. It's really cool.
Yeah. Now I will say that it did when I went through it the first time, it felt overwhelming because it was like all of these different options and things, and you had to download this, and it's a program I've never used. So I can understand where you're coming from. But let me give you a little bit of hope with that. Once you do it the first time, I did it the first time and I was rolling. It's just like everything is there. If you have a question, obviously you can ask. And I think most people that have used it now have figured out the bare bones of it. And you can manipulate some of the elements a little bit to make, a more creative card if you want. Like when I turned the card landscape. So I'm not saying that you have to do that, but I don't know. I haven't done it yet, but I believe there's probably a way to get rid of the border and make a full art card so that the art is the whole, kind of like national promos. I haven't done that yet, but I feel 98% confident I could do it with the card designer. And I think it was made open-ended like that to where you could kind of show some creativity using the elements. Just obviously we want to honor the requests and things for there to be the Cactus Game Design copyright and then card designer on the designs that you make so that they are published as fan created cards and not anything that's pretending to be official. So
that makes sense.
Yep. Now, as far as this, we've had a little opening conversation here, but I want to give a roadmap for what we're going to do on this recording. And it's not going to be a super long thing. It's not going to be one of those like layered, nuanced episodes. It's going to be just me and Jake here just talking and giving opinions. Yeah. Opinions can get us into trouble sometimes, but hopefully we'll kind
We already
of
got political. We can't get any worse.
we'll stay on the straight and narrow. But I just want to kind of take the year of 2024 and put it in review and talk about some of the experiences that we had as Redemption players, as podcasters, and then also, kind of how all of that intersected with our personal lives potentially, for some of the experiences overall. So we've got some things that we want to talk about and do. Before we get into that, it's been a while since we had a community mailbag, so I did reach out and I asked you guys to send over some questions. So we're going to pick the 3 best questions that we have here, and we're going to ask those. So we'll pose them back and forth, and we'll talk about those, and then we'll get into talking about the year in review, and kind of talking, like looking back at the past year. But then we'll also take a few minutes and look towards the future and what we think the next year holds for the game, for the podcast, things like that. I don't know how intricate we'll get on a lot of these topics, but I do just want to, we've got them as bullet points and we just want to discuss them. So open discussion about that. And then I do always want to make sure that we make it a point to say it. I know we've talked about it a little bit already, but we are sponsored by Your Turn Games. Super thankful for them. You talk about year in review. There was a lot of changes for the podcast this year, and one of those was, moving from Covenant Games being our sponsor to Your Turn Games. And I believe that while it is sometimes change can be, I don't know, a little awkward or whatever, especially when, you're still interacting with John that has Covenant Games and whatever. It can be kind of awkward. And I know that I was a little wary about how that would work out, but moving over to Your Turn Games, I think has been beneficial for us at the podcast. It's been beneficial, I hope, for Andy. And as we get back into regular episodes, I think it's beneficial, and it will be beneficial for the community as a whole. So definitely want to thank those guys for extending themselves and choosing to, put some of their resources into the podcast here so that we can continue to record and not have to worry about so much overhead cost and things to get each episode out. So you got anything you want to say before we jump into the community mailbag?
I'm excited for these questions. They look really good.
All right, let's go.
Now, it's your chance to join the podcast and have your voice heard as we get ready to answer your questions with this week's Community Mailbag.
That's right, community mailbag, where you get to have your voice heard. At least 3 of you. That normally we try to say, get your questions in and we'll answer all of them. But we have learned over doing this in the past that this is a segment of the podcast that runs way too long, extends episodes way too long, creates a longer editing process and things, which normally if we lived in a perfect world, not a problem. We love to get more questions in, involve more listeners in the community, but it does create a little bit more work for getting the episodes recorded and out. So we're going to try to rein it in, and we'll keep potentially time constraint questions. So if you ask a question that's not heard on the podcast, that's recorded that week, and it's not a I don't know what I'm trying to explain. You know what I'm trying to explain, I think. Where 2 weeks from now, that question is no longer relevant.
Exactly.
As long as it stays relevant, then we'll just keep it in a pool and we can pull from in the future. So we will do that. But anyway, so question number 1 here. You want to fire that off?
Yeah. Question number 1, can you get Brian Hake on the podcast and or do a history of Redemption podcast episodes? That's from Mr. Hiatus Tyler Stevens. I think that's a great idea.
I concur. I do think that is a great idea. But here's the thing. Let's have a little discussion here.
Here's the fly in the ointment.
Here's the fly in the ointment. How much history? Well, here's the question. How much history of the game do you care about?
Ooh, well, I think a lot more than other people, because anytime Gabe has any sort of paragraph that's back in 2000 blah blah blah, we were doing this with the designing this set, and this person said to do this, and this one I said to do this, and I loved and we designed this card to we call this card Camel Butt. Like, what's going on with this? Like,
Yeah.
there's always interesting things to hear about from Redemption history. Also, I love card game design, so I love hearing about all those things.
Okay. And you're also on a podcast. I'm on a podcast. Yeah. So I'm curious about a lot of that as well, but I also feel like I have to balance that in my thought process with there's people out there that might not care as much about the history of the game. They're more interested in the game right now, what they're able to. I mean, and it's also probably driven by how much time you have to dedicate to this as a hobby. If you can only dedicate, a couple hours a week to it, you're probably not jumping in as deep as you can trying to figure out the bare bones of the history of the game. It might be one of those things that piques your interest and you would listen to an episode on it, but we would have to comb through and find like, what is the history of Redemption that we're wanting to cover? Like, what is the thing that we're targeting to bring to people on a podcast episode? So I'm definitely Brian Hake and any other ones that, were involved in the history of the game. I would love to do that. Like, and I talked about it when we rebranded the podcast this past year and brought you on as co-host. I was like, I really want to get back to having, guests on the episodes and things and figure out how we can balance that out. And it's one of those things to where obviously we've got to be recording, steady episodes and things. And that didn't happen here in kind of what is considered the Redemption off season, so to speak. And now we're into the new year and it's going to start ramping up with tournament season and things. But I still want to find a way to fit those in and bring on people that have some history with the game. So I'm open to doing this. But if someone like Tyler is going to give me the idea, like Tyler knows a lot of the history of the game, I need to know like what the community would be interested in hearing about as a whole. So if you are, not Tyler, not one of the elders that have been around and know a lot of things, if you're someone that's just a general listener, let us know what in the history of Redemption would you like we had Rob Anderson on and talked about kind of how the game got started and things. So we kind of have that basis covered. And we've talked to some people that have been involved in the game in the past. Like we talked to Josiah Beers, we talked to Travis, and we're willing to do more of those type of things. I need to know what we're gearing that towards when we're doing that. So definitely open to doing that. Just need to get a little bit more research done and data logging for knowing what we're targeting. So long-winded way to say maybe. Maybe. Definitely maybe. So the next question we have here is from Robar. And it says, how do you determine which cards are added to the reserve rather than the deck? And I think what he's talking about here is that conundrum that players find where they're like, this card is beneficial in both places and not necessarily something that, is evident. This one makes sense in the reserve more than, but what about those cards that kind of feel like they could be either or, and how do you determine that? And I'll let you take this question first because you did finish second at Nats. So I feel like you got a little bit more room to speak here. So I'll let you take it away.
I think the first place to start is maybe your card can be used in deck or reserve, but sometimes it functions just better in reserve. And let's give an example of this. We have the card called Herod's Executioner, which when it enters battle allows you to equip a weapon from reserve, and then it allows you to ban to a New Testament Gold human. So you could play that in your main deck, but if you play it on turn one, you can't go to reserve, so you're not equipping a weapon, and then you are just banding. So that's just not that impressive. So if a card goes to reserve, which means it does not work on round one, like means if you draw it in round one and the whole point of the card is to go to reserve, maybe it's better off in reserve so you can actually find it after you need it. Like, so the Stever can go to Executioner on turn two on your block two rather than your block one, because obviously you couldn't go on block one. But the point is now it's active after that. So it's in the reserve. You can grab it out of the reserve. Now it's active. It's not a good block on turn one. So there's that. There's also cards that play cards from reserve, like we're talking about this guy. Take this example again. Herod's Execution. He plays a weapon from reserve. So you could have, you could be playing weapons in deck, but if you don't have a weapon in reserve, you don't have a target for him. So we put the weapon in reserve because the weapon can be targeted by him. So one of the things you want to do, if you are just building your deck, make a list of every card in your deck that can go to reserve and say, okay, I got Den of Thieves and go to reserve for a New Testament Crimson card, if I remember correctly. And I got this guy that bans to a card from reserve, and I got this card that pulls a nativity character out of reserve. You make a list of all those things. You say, what targets do I want to have for those cards in reserve? And you don't have to have a target for all of those cards necessarily, but sometimes you will. It just depends on the situation. And then you start building your reserve from there. But yeah, like basically cards in your reserve, there are going to be a lot of cards that are situationally good, like cards that you wouldn't win against everybody. But we had one card in our reserve called, I forgot his name already, but he's a blue hero. And
Hezron the Enclosed.
Yeah, Hezron the Enclosed. Yeah.
Come on, if you need a guy to tell you a blue hero, I'm right here, man.
Exactly. So Hezron the Enclosed. His only ability for our deck is to have the star ability, and his star ability can actually be active from our discard pile, from our hand. He doesn't even have to be in play. So we put Hezron the Enclosed in our reserve because later on in the game we'll be able to grab him with Mary or grab him with another card, and we can put him in our hand. We can discard him in discard phase, and then later on we can use his star ability with Star of Bethlehem from our discard pile. And that card is not good in the deck. The only thing he does in the deck, actually he does nothing in the deck, because the whole point of his ability is to be used during your opponent's combat, so you can't naturally draw him during your opponent's combat. It has to be the 3 on your opening turn, so the card does nothing, literally nothing, if it was in our opening deck. But on our reserve, he's something we can grab out, and he enhances our Star of Bethlehem for the rest of the game against Meek attacking decks. So it's just a little bit of thought on all those things. Do you have Coven of Philistia in your deck? Do you play against somebody who has Coven of Philistia in their deck all the time? You're like, oh, I'm going to sneak in an animal here because they're going to play Coven of Philistia. I might as well get an animal out of this. All those things, they add together. And that's what you should be putting in your reserve. Cards tend to be, you have more enhancements in reserve because you want to have your characters actually usually in battle. Not all characters, but some. You tend to have a little bit more enhancements in reserve than as a balance than in your deck. Storehouse likes to grab enhancements, etc. So just a few of those things to think about. There's a lot of logical reasons to put cards in reserve. It just takes some time to go through all of them.
Okay. One point of clarification I want to make on here is just as the listeners were listening to you provide great insight. You mentioned our deck a couple of times, and I just want to clarify. You're speaking about the deck that you and both Babooni Tim played and finished first and second at Nationals. That's the Nativity deck. And you can, again, another plug for Your Turn Games is you can go and see them listed under National Winning Decks, Champion Decks. And then you can click and see a video where you guys do a really good job breaking that down for the card choices in there and how to play the deck and things like that. So if you're listening to that and he's saying our deck and you don't know what he's talking about and it's kind of got you, because sometimes I'll hear something and I don't understand that and I'll focus on what I don't understand and not catch a lot of the other stuff. Go back and listen to him again after you've checked out the deck and you can understand the context of that. But all of the other points, 100% spot on. You want to make sure you have cards that function well, both in your deck. You want the cards that you've selected to be in your deck to function better in your deck than they do in your reserve, unless it's a specific thing to where you're trying to do something, that is potentially a combo or something like that. But you want to find out where you can maximize the value of that card slot. Is it putting that in your deck or is it putting it in your reserve? Whichever one functions the most efficient for your deck and allows you to access it in the most efficient way to leverage that in a game to try to get yourself to your win condition. That's where you're going to want to play that. Now, one other thing I would like to say is you have to think about when you're balancing these cards that can play either deck or reserve. Sometimes you run into a situation to where even though it probably makes sense to put it in a reserve, sometimes you might want to put it in deck because of the opportunity cost associated with that card in the reserve. You only get 10 cards in your reserve. If this is a card that you can access in your deck and get, similar usage, maybe not quite as potent, like maybe it's a less effective card on turn 1, but for the most part, you want to play it out of your deck. Well, don't just throw that into reserve because you're costing yourself a slot in reserve for another card that, might not give you anything in your deck. So you have to balance out, how you're going to use those 10 card slots, because it's really tight when you start building a deck. And then what I would say, and I know this is something that maybe players have different feelings about, but if you play, let's just say, a handful of games and you've got a card in your reserve for this purpose, but you have never used it for that purpose, it's just been in your reserve, take it out, try something else, and then decide whether the comfort level of you having that and the confidence of you having that in case you need to go to it, is that more important than what another card in that slot could give you? Mm-hmm. So I would just not be afraid to tinker around, and don't lock yourself into, this is my reserve, and you feel like you kind of are stuck with that. Sometimes it's nice to just take all 10 cards in your reserve, lay them out with your deck and don't have a reserve, and then start looking through each card and seeing which one makes sense to go into your deck. But you definitely should make sure that you have a way to access every card in your reserve. That has happened to me multiple times. I believe it's happened to every person that deck builds a lot, is you'll put a card in your reserve and you're like, okay, I'll do this. This makes sense for this. And then you'll get into the game and you'll be like, I have no way to get to that card. So make sure that you analyze and you have a consistent way to each card in there for the purpose that you have it.
Yeah. And if I could add one final thing, this just came up to me. I remembered this. One other reason I put some cards in reserve is if I'm trying to hide them from cards like Matthew or Queen Tapini's. Like, there's like, if you have multi-brigade cards, you might want to hide them in your reserve rather than having them be seen in your hand and having you discard the top 10 cards of your deck. Have Matthew draw 10 cards all at once. Like, I like Foreign Wives more in the reserve than the made deck, just because like sometimes Matthew comes in, sees Foreign Wives, they draw 10 and they've drawn their regardless protection enhancement, so you're like, this is kind of like really bad now. Like, I could block with this Foreign Wives, but if they have that enhancement, I'm toast. So sometimes it's good to hide multi-brigade cards in your reserve. And I'm not saying you have to, just food for thought there.
That's definitely a good thought, but I would also make sure you don't lock yourself into a thought like that to where you feel like you see Foreign Wives, it's always got to be in reserve. Because I feel like there's players out there that right now still feel like with Matthew running around that is something you have to do. If you have Foreign Wives, you have to play it in reserve. That might actually be, let's just say, like, I feel like probably 70 to 75%, that's probably the right play to have it in reserve. That doesn't mean that it's always the right thing. So feel free to tinker with it and play multiple games both ways and see how it works out, instead of just taking your first thought. Like, question your first thought, like, put it to the test to where this is where I think it goes. Play some games, and does it really go there, or does it need to move over? And be willing to change that, and be willing to be wrong. Yeah. Because, I mean, we all have initial thoughts, and unless they ever get challenged, then you never know whether 100% that is the right call or if that's just what you feel most comfortable with. But on to the next question before we ramble on too long. You want to take that one, Jake?
Yes. What would an anti-meta deck include in your opinion, and how do you think such a deck would rank at Nats? That's from Markville Lake. So that's a really good question there. What would an anti-meta deck include in your opinion, and how do you think a deck would rank at Nats? So, like, I can tell you, like, I did try to take Nativity as a bit of an anti-meta deck, in the sense of, like, it was meant to fight some of the, I guess it wasn't specifically built to beat Clay good stuff decks. Obviously it had a lot of investment into that, but it was also built to beat like decks like what is it, the pot
of mana?
Yeah, pot of mana deck,
or honey pot.
Yeah, even though it didn't see any real play at that point, but it was built to really like be very resilient to a lot of the decks in the format. But as far as an anti-meta deck right now, an anti-meta deck is specifically focusing on what the meta is doing, and right now we don't have a solidified meta around anything. Right now we're in a really big experience, like a point of different strategies. We got Abishai, shenanigans. We got just random Moabite decks and blue decks and clay decks running around, and still Nativities running around. So there's a lot of things, and it's hard to. Yeah, I
think one of the best ways to analyze this is kind of to separate or to let's define what is an anti-meta deck, because I think like your thought and what you guys did last year, that is like Nativity last year was an anti-meta deck. Like maybe not designed intentionally to beat clay and whatever, but you did think about what is the strongest plays in the meta right now, and then you thought about how do you put an answer in this deck, and you settled on that deck because you thought it offered the most answers across the breadth of like what you would expect to see in a meta tournament. I think a lot of times when people say the phrasing anti-meta deck, and I'm not saying that Mark is thinking this way or not, but I feel like some people automatically just go to some insane like 100 card deck that's trying to stop everything your opponent's doing, and it's like doesn't have to be that deep. An anti-meta deck can be a meta deck with a handful of like strategies built in to answer the different game interactions that you're commonly going to see. Like you knew last year you were going to see people come out, they were going to rush and try to get some kind of counter put down while accelerating, and that's where every deck wanted to be able to play Lost Child Found. And they're going to continue to want to do that because being able to just, boom, 3 cards just come up off the face of the game state? Absolutely. Yeah. And so, obviously, now do we say that any deck that's playing Lost Child Found, that's an anti-meta card? Technically, I mean, like even though everybody's playing it, it's played to answer the things that you're commonly going to see. So it's how far that sliding scale, or like how deep into anti-meta do you have to be? Like how many plays do you have to have in a deck to call it an anti-meta deck? And so, like, and I think to understand it and give context and a good answer for this, you have to understand that, like, when you build an anti-meta deck, I think it looks more like what you did last year, trying to find a deck that can answer everything that you need to answer while still accelerating to your win condition as fast as possible. Yeah. And I know that the deck you had played 2 years ago, you felt like it was a little too slow just because it was trying to play a more, like, fair game to where it was like, okay, I'm going to let you do this, but then I'm going to take stuff and resources with having thieves and all of that. Well, that's good, but Thieves almost has to let your opponent establish themselves before they have, so that they have things for you to take and manipulate. Yeah. And you don't want to let them get to that point in the current game today because most of the time you're already behind at that point. So I think defining where you are on that scale is probably important.
And if I could say, like, when I looked at this question, I was thinking about Thieves now as the potential, like, dark horse at Nats, this next Nats, because this is my new deck. I call it Take, and it's Joshua Thieves. And I think it kind of really fills in some of the holes that New Testament Gold had with Thieves. With both of these themes themed around taking cards from your opponent, they start feeding off each other in terms of synergy. One of the interesting things you'll notice as a Thieves defense in the past was you usually take good enhancements out of your opponent's hand because you just need to, like, not to let them play the Authority of Christ, which means you don't have evil enhancements to play out of your hand on your Thieves, within a Thieves, etc. But now that you have Joshua taking evil cards too, and Joshua taking forts, which means Joshua's taking away their storehouse, he's taking away stables that are stopping you from getting to their hand, they start feeding together in this really rolling ball of synergy. And I might, in some sense, I could consider that an anti-meta deck because it has answers for pretty much every card type. Like, if they have a card type that they have a fort you need to get rid of, well, Joshua can grab that. And they have a evil card that you need to take, Joshua can take it. All those things, I really think that Take might be an interesting deck to run at Nats this year. I don't know if it's the most consistent, but I think it could be any deck in any given situation with some of the really powerful Take cards it's got. So that's one of the things I'm on my radar right now.
And I guess kind of that spiel I had about finding out where you are on that scale kind of leads to the second part of his question is, once you figure out what you're going to put into an anti-meta deck. And I know that we didn't give specifics here on this, and I really don't think that you can at this point. Like, you can say ballpark, like, this is what we expect to happen with the meta, and then but all of that is kind of like you're trying to have the answer to what is not already defined. You almost have to let it define itself to then find out what the answer is going to be. You know, last year we saw about this time, Honeypot took over, and it was able to force the game state into a favorable situation, you know, leveraging the cards that had just came out with Roots and Israel's Rebellion. So I guess probably most people would look to that as like a hard anti-meta deck
I think
from
so.
last year. But if you think about just having the plays in there and building a deck like you guys did for your anti-meta deck, well, one of those decks ended up winning nationals.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how well it's going to do at nationals, I guess, depends on how well defined you are with this. And so it's like it's hard to give an answer. And this is maybe something like later on we could come up with, on a future episode, is after the meta starts to get defined, like what are like good meta answers and things to try to counter what we're seeing. But I really do think that at this point, if you build your deck kind of like you guys did, to where you just have answers for what you expect to see across a variety of decks, and you just want to have answers tucked into your deck, I think a deck like that can do very well at nationals. But if you do the whole like honeypot thing, to where it's like it's built to make the game state forced into a certain, like all roads don't lead to the same, end point. And I believe that honeypot, a deck like that, has less different paths to get to its end point so it can't adapt a lot. It's kind of just what it is, and there's not a lot of room. And I think that's why I don't think that honeypot was ever going to be a real threat at nationals last year, because it came out so early and people got to see it and know how to play around it.
Yeah.
And had it been, debuted at nationals or shortly leading up to nationals, where people didn't have a lot of time to prepare for it, I think it would have caught people off guard and would have been a top cut deck for sure.
Yeah.
And so I think the difference is, the more you go into that like hard anti-meta play, the more you need to like not expose it. So it's kind of a fine line to run there. But we said a lot of words. I don't know if we answered your question at all, Mark, but that's what you get. We're not up to snuff just yet, but
not yet.
Now I'd like to go ahead and turn to this past year and start talking about it in review. And I do think that it feels like overall this was one of our more exciting years, because we did have Roots come out, and I know it came out technically before the new year, but where did most of the gameplay that it saw happen?
Yeah.
In the heart of this year. And then we had, I don't want to say it and it be taken as a negative, but I do think that there was a bit of disappointment with Israel's Rebellion, especially with the way that they came out in appearance, having the white borders extended, things like that. There wasn't a ton of like great reception for it when it first came out, but then I think when Roots came out, people had enough between the two of those to be excited about the new cards. There was some new promos that came out that were kind of cool. So I think it didn't start off with the biggest like hoorah because of like Israel's Rebellion and kind of that. But I think this year ended up, as it went along, it was a healthy tournament season. We got to see a lot of people come out and improve and do well at tournaments. We got to see a lot of like travel. Babuni Tim going to Arkansas, going up to Oregon. I think Brian went over to Arkansas as well. Just a lot of traveling. A lot of people traveled to multiple, maybe not multiple regionals, but it felt like there was a high number of people that went multiple state tournaments. And so I think just the excitement level kind of built towards it. And I was a little wary about nationals as being one of the big things on the calendar. But I think as we got to that point, it was a good nationals. And so I think there was a lot of like, how do I say it? Feels like it was like tempered excitement throughout the tournament season, leading up to, I don't know. How would you assess the year? Just kind of an overview.
An overview of this year. It's been, there's been so much going on, especially in my personal life too. So like this year's just stretched full of like chock full of amazing things. I've loved Roots being part of draft, like getting to do our first full Roots drafts. Like there's no chaff in the back of the pack. You're not just throwing these cards away. You're like, this cards actually matter to your draft. That's been so cool. Obviously, Nats was amazing. Getting there, having Babooni there, getting to meet him there, and just meet everybody again. And like, I know more people than last year, and just amazing people all around. So fun to finally get Top Cut. All those things. To see decks rise and fall throughout the year. We're talking about Honeypot, like you said, that deck would have been insane if it was just revealed going into Nats, but everybody kind of had it on the radar, and it didn't really flourish after that. But there were some cool decks at Nats too. We had Widow's Table, Clay, that was really interesting. Just so lots of Nicanor Clay, that was really cool. So lots of cool innovations throughout the year. Some cool cards released. But yeah, tournament wise, like it's been a very interesting year. Like I think that people didn't rate Nativity pretty well up until Nats, and now it's properly rated. And Matthew's still been amazing as we've seen. And then moving into this Inheritance season, it's been really interesting to see all the new decks people are coming up with and new thoughts. Husham, that card's really interesting. Like the card's not great on its own, but when Glory is around, that card goes wild. So there's so many things. Glory Hush is just really strong. So, man, it's just been a crazy year. There's so much to talk about, and oh man, yeah.
Well, okay. Well, let's peel it back and just what was your favorite? I mean, I know this is going to be a loaded one, but what was your favorite moment throughout the year, both personally and for the game as a whole? Like, so your experience with Redemption and your personal experience, what was your favorite moment? But then what do you think your favorite moment for the whole of Redemption is, for like the community at large?
Yeah, personally in Redemption, I think I think we went over this on our Out of Nats podcast, just to reiterate, like getting to top 8, just barely getting in top 8, and like me and Babooni are there, and like this is prayer, like this is a blessing from God. This is amazing that we made top 8. Like maybe we keep on going. Like even if we just lose in the first round, that was fun. We did it, and then we're like, okay, we made it for the first round. You made it for the first round? Like yeah. Like wouldn't it be cool if we played each other in finals? That's not going to happen. We're both probably going to lose, but let's go to the next round. Oh wow! So we keep on going, and then we play each other in the finals. That was really amazing. Just a lot of fun. And then for Redemption as a whole, let's see here. Like I enjoyed coming on to the podcast. Oh no, that's also personal. I guess it's not for Redemption as a whole.
Well, hey, it does affect the community as a whole because
it does.
I mean, I do think that when we made the changes and brought you on, like that jolt of energy into the podcast was like, I mean, it rode us to nationals, and I think it was an important thing for the community as a whole. So you could throw that in there, but that's also kind of like a self, like building up yourself. Look, we're not trying to
no, exactly
come off arrogant or anything, but I do think that objectively it was an important thing that happened this year.
I think Inheritance release is really one of the cool ones, and the fact that like we see AI art being used for the first time in a major way, and they did a really cool job with the themes, having the themes centered around an art style, and it's really cool to see. Oh, like I can tell what card it belongs to, what card belongs to which theme, not just by the brigade color, but by the art style. Like, and that kind of ties it together thematically, emotionally too. I thought that was really cool. So, Inheritance being released is really cool. The new promos have been really awesome. Glory of the Lord. Glory of the Lord was released this year, right? Like that card.
I believe
good.
so.
Yeah,
it might have been at the tail end of last year, but I think it was this year.
Yeah, that card is really good. And one of the cool things about the card, I think, is that it actually it is insanely powerful, but it also leaves you open for some really big misplays. Because I've misplayed that card a few times this year, and when you misplay it and they you block with the big defensive band and you're like, Lori, you're not playing anything, and they're like Resurrection,
and they protect themselves,
and they banned in a huge bunch of heroes, and now they're bigger than you can't play any enhancements, and you're like, oh, that kind of just ruined the whole thing I was setting up there. Or like I did earlier, I did a pre-attack Glory because I was like, I have a few battle extenders dominance, like I'll just go in and Glory and make sure even if he has a martyr or something, I'll be fine. And I go in it, and he's like, Husham. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. So Husham, ruins the battle, and I can't extend battle because there's no more characters in battle. It's like, no, I can't. This is horrible. if I hadn't played Glory, sorry for the noise. If I hadn't played Glory, I could have negated it. But it's a very powerful card, and
I really like the design of cards like that to where it's like it works straight up, like it does exactly what it says. So it's simple, but the nuance of knowing when to play it. Do you play it before they present, after they present? Do you like where is it? And I think the fact that there is such a variance on the application of it and the effect that it can have in a game it's a great thing for the game.
Definitely. So that's what I'd say. I could go on for more, but I think that's what's been cool. We've had and foils being added to the game. That's really cool. I remember talking about wouldn't it be cool if we could add foils to the game? And Gabe's like, we can't. It would be hard to do because of this. It'd be hard to do with that. Guys, I'm like, oh, okay, that's gonna be years down the road. And they came out a couple days later. That was just really funny. So like he didn't lie to me, but he like kind of led me down.
He didn't tell the truth. Yes. So when it comes to favorite moments for me, I guess personally, I'm not going to lie, and I don't want this to sound like I'm throwing my buddy Brad under the bus, but I really do think that getting to rebrand the podcast and kind of give it a little bit of new life with the, voiceover intros and things, different segmented ideas, things that just, when we sit down and we press record, things that make it easier for me to go through the process of recording an episode, bringing it to completed work and then publishing it. I can't say that that's not my favorite thing overall, is the fact that the podcast is in a better spot now than it was at this time last year. And a lot of that was Brad and I both having busy schedules and things and not being able to work that on. But I think making the changes that we did was in the best interest of having a podcast product for the community at large. But when it comes to the most, again, the foil's great idea. But I think one of my favorite things that happened for the game as a whole is that we honored some of our elders in the game, and I don't mean like elders, the people that design cards and make the rules and things. I mean the fact that Nationals was in Michigan this year, and Ron Sias has been one of the oldest players of the game, as far as tenure playing the game, maybe the longest, I don't know. We'll have to work on our history of the game, but seeing him get to host Nationals at his church, after how long he's played this game and things, and being able to go up there and enjoy that experience with him, going over and hanging out with him, watching, WrestleMania or whatever after it wrapped up. That was just a cool experience overall. And I think just showing that, the game is willing to acknowledge and honor the people that have invested into it for so long, both, not just from a monetary standpoint, but just being a person in the game that has like grown and changed with the game. I think that was really cool to see. And Nationals was a great experience. The church was great. It was a good venue for it. I know that it did stink not having, housing or whatever, overnight accommodations at the church, because that potentially affected some people being able to go or made it more expensive for them to go. But beyond that, I thought it was really cool to see the game, honor him and let him be a part of hosting Nationals. And I treasure that experience of getting to partake in that Nationals for that reason. So what do you think is the most surprising thing that happened this past year? Like, just, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, and I'm going to take this from you. It's the fact that someone came on and said that they were going to learn the game and start trying to work on doing how good could they do at learning the game before Nationals. Then they went on to win Nationals, and they are one of the more prominent figures in our game now because of all the content that they bring. He's now the owner of Three Lions Gaming, or not Three Lions. Sorry. I am sorry. We're going to edit this out. He's now the owner of Land of Redemption. Like, that's insane for someone to come on and that just glow up in a year's time. So Babooni Tim and his rise to prominence in the community, I think it was pretty surprising of how, like, he didn't even bust a sweat. It didn't feel like he was winning tournaments throughout. And then Nationals came and he just did what he had been doing. So I think that was pretty surprising. probably says a little bad about the rest of us.
Honestly, it feels like you can answer a lot of these questions with Babuni. Like he can't be understated. How he came into the community. He was willing to learn. He was willing to make mistakes. He was willing to grow from those mistakes. I love the video that he made about like, this is Babuni in the wild making silly decisions. And like, that's the type of mindset you need to have as a player to be able to grow fast. Like the more you're willing to open up to your mistakes and say, no, that's not the right play, the more you're able to grow. And it turns out it's an important life lesson. I think that's one of the big things I learned from Magic in the day is just because you played well does not mean you play perfectly. And almost every game, you're going to find that there's some big things that you got to change, or even medium things that you got to change that give you a little bit more percentage. Like if you make some small misplays at the end, even and you were like, oh, I'm 90% chance to win, and you bring that down to 85% chance, and they win on that 15%, you're like, well, you could have taken it to 90%, but you gave them more of a window to come back. And they came back. The same thing can happen in Redemption. Like if you don't play tight the whole way through, you might give your opponent more chances to get back into the game, and you really just want to be able to learn from those mistakes. Obviously, you're going to make mistakes, but the fool, like think to the Proverbs, the fool says, "Oh, my mistakes. They just got lucky. It's not about my mistakes." The wise man will say, "No, like they did get lucky, but at the same time, I made some mistakes that let them get back in the game." And Babuni showed us what happens when you take some humility, you take some hard work, you apply that all, and you learn. Like he was just willing to learn from pros, willing to learn from the people all around him who helped him, and then he showed off his brilliance in helping people too. Like he grew and he started helping other people. He did a great thing this year.
I definitely think his willingness to extend himself to help others understand the game better with some of his helpful videos. He saw that was a potential void that we had, and kind of stepped up and just started making videos for those type of players. And then the more detailed nuance, like Jaden does his overview of an entire deck, but I guess that's content is easier for you to take in if you're an established player. It's not always the most, new player friendly. And that's not a knock on Jaden. That's just saying, what his content is. And then Babuni feeling like he was going through this process and learning it himself firsthand. So he wanted to kind of create it's almost like blogging your journey or whatever, like people do. And I think that was really helpful. But obviously he is one of the top players in the game now. And I think that's as long as he's active and playing the game, I think that's going to be the case because of just how his mind works. And like we saw that he has a good knack for these style of games and things. But when we talk about the top players and the game and top players of this past year, there's several names that jump off. Like I know that he joined last year, but this year just being a prominent figure throughout the Lackey Grand Prix and things, but Joe Mama, and I mean, that's the Discord name, but Joe Andrighetti, and he played well throughout the season. He did well at nationals. Like, I mean, he's now a prominent top level player in the game. I believe that we got to see kind of a glimpse of Justin returning to form a little bit, the Guardian. Mm-hmm. He played a few different decks throughout the year, and I know he missed Top Cut. He was one of those in that 10 to 14 range or whatever, I believe is where he finished, somewhere in there with a lot of decent players stacked up. Mm-hmm.
Jonesy did an amazing this year. And
one more thing going the right way, he could have been Top Cut. Jonesy, yep. Yeah. Mr. Booster Jones himself. Yeah. You also have Jaden, like, I don't even know what you call him. I was trying to come up there just then with a cool nickname for
the jailer.
Even when he tinkers with stuff and he, you think he's not in peak form, and then he goes to nationals and he does well. Yeah. You got Jeremy Chambers. Jay Chambers throughout the year did well. Didn't have the nationals that he wants. Had kind of the nationals that we like to poke fun at him. You were just you got there, you should have been, but you weren't. But take away us wanting to throw barbs at him, and he had a good year throughout the tournament season. especially, you know, coming up from piloting and creating, I guess mutually creating. I believe it was him and John Early worked on it, but Honeypot, and then taking that and branching away and playing several different decks throughout the year and doing well with all of them. So those are the players that I think come to mind when I think about players that did well. And we had other top players that kind of was less involved in the game.
I'd like to highlight E-Man there because like he had a really amazing year again.
Yeah.
And Potratz always like whenever I look at Nats, I'm looking at Potratz's decks because he's usually got his eye on one of the best decks in the meta. So I want to be able to beat his decks going into Nats.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like Josh Potratz did well at Nationals, and throughout the year, he wasn't as involved as he has been in the past. Obviously, getting married, or I want to say he's already married. I know that he had gotten engaged. I'm pretty sure he got married as well. And was married at Nationals. I believe that had already come to pass at that time. But, you know, just taking time away with that and going through that, you know, not everyone can always be as involved in the game, but those top flight players, like those guys are going to be able to pick it up, and they might not be as sharp as they would be otherwise, but they are still top players in the game. I'm glad that you mentioned Emmanuel because he did do really well at Nationals. He kept talking about, am I going to get into the top 10 now because we did the power rankings? And if you just think about those power rankings, like there were some people on there that were not going to fall off those power rankings. Like you had to force me to take you off. Like you had a good season and you did well. And I think that seeing top players do well in this game and seeing like the caliber of people that they are outside of the game, it's kind of a cool thing. Like I don't feel like we have a community that has like those super aggressive people that are like dismissive of other people beneath them that rise to the top and like create that hierarchy and that weird awkwardness. And, you know, I don't think we have that. I think we have people that when they do well, like we enjoy the fact that they're doing well because we see them put in the work. And I think that's cool to see within our community. Yeah. Who would you say is the most improved player of the last year?
I mean, we're excluding Babuni here, right? Because like he just literally started and became the top player in the game. So, right? Does he count? Like, or are we excluding Babuni on this?
I think that we can acknowledge that if we start him from the basis of his journey to his apex and where he was at the top of the mountain, no one's going to necessarily beat that. But I almost feel like we need to, like, I'm talking about more of an established, like, this is where this player is. And then by the end of the tournament season, by the end of the year here, since it is a calendar year thing, like, who's the most improved? So let's exclude him for this part. But
I'm having a hard time thinking of who would be the most improved this year. Like, I want to say Joe Mama, but like he's been good. He was good last year too, but maybe he improved enough to be on that list.
It can even be more localized. Like you don't have to say overall, like community wise, but like if somewhere in the Texas play group, like you know someone that really improved or whatever. This is going to So I will say that in Chris's play group, I've played a lot of people there a lot over the years. Like, so I have a strong basis for it. But Philip and Luke, they are on Discord. One's a Bible verse name, and then one's just Luke. Philip is like, I don't know what his username is, but those guys have started improving pretty good and showing up pretty well in results across tournaments and things higher than what they have as an average. And I believe they were both around like 20th, somewhere in there, 20 to 25 at Nationals in a field of, what was it, like 60? So that's not terrible. And I think that access to the Discord and being involved in, a space where you can ask questions and get answers and, seeing players like that soak that up, and I think that those two are two of the ones that they're constantly, like, if it's dead in Discord, they're going to ask a question like, do you think this card is good? And some of those questions are a little bit like, sometimes I take them and I'm like, it's a frustrating question because it's all subjective. Like, do you think it's good?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, you almost want to say that, but like, you can tell that, like, asking the questions and questioning why a card is or isn't good and things like that is kind of like a little bit of that thought process from Tim, to where it's like, you're coming in, you're trying to, like, when he came in, this is an established thought. Why is it an established thought? Why is this the thing? And seeing them kind of replicate that thought process has kind of been cool. And I do think that they are greatly improved from the last couple of years. Like this past year, they were a lot more challenging to play. So I just want to give them a shout out for that. That's more of a localized thing that maybe everyone else isn't going to come in contact with. But
on a localized thing, I'd give shout outs to Travis Burke and Stephen Brooks, because I think they've both gotten a lot better. Travis has been pretty
Stephen
new
Brooks,
and he's been growing. And Stephen Brooks has been around for a while, but like I think he keeps on getting better and better. Like he's I think he's been doing a lot of drafts and II, and it shows because he has a really good handle on the format. So I think that he's getting better and better. Not that he was bad before, but like I keep on seeing him grow and get better at the game. So I'd say that.
Yep. What do you think and this is going to be highly subjective because it's your experience to answer, but what were the best tournament experiences that you had this year?
Having a tournament at my apartment, back at my old apartment, was really awesome. Just having guys over and getting some games in. Like, that's one of the things about Redemption. Like, you just never get to play it enough. And it's so nice to have some guys around and play some games and spend a day, like, fellowshipping and playing games and just enjoying each other's company. That's really awesome. I'd love to host some more tournaments again when I have the free time. But that's the thing with Redemption. Like, I want to play some Redemption, but, like, I can't, like, it takes time to sign up and get somebody to host a Zoom game or host a Lackey game. And sometimes you just want to, like, rock a quick game out, but you need to organize with somebody. It doesn't work. But that getting to play it, getting to set aside some time was good. And Nationals is obviously amazing. So those are my two big points for this year.
I think that getting to travel to, obviously, Nationals going up to Michigan. I had never been to Michigan. But also getting to go up to Kentucky again for a state tournament there, the Tennessee tournaments, getting to just take advantage of a few extra tournaments that not everyone else can take advantage of due to time and the ability to travel and things, and having the flexibility. I know that I always talk about being busy at work and things, but it's always nice to also be able to take advantage of the flexibility that my job does provide with letting me take the time off to go and travel to those tournaments. So I think just being able to do that is obviously a blessing, and I do enjoy that. I don't know how much of that I'm going to do this year because there are some changes to adapt to and things, but I want to say that probably one of my, and I should have mentioned this as one of my favorite moments, but it's kind of an extended moment, and it falls more in with tournament experience, I guess, was going to Nationals, and instead of getting a hotel, we did the Airbnb. So we had a bunch of people hanging out in a house and getting to play games here and there, just different pockets of people hanging out, and just getting to share the company of each other a little bit more than, okay, we're at the church, now we got to go to a hotel and we're all secluded in different rooms at the hotel and things. I think having that common space was really cool, and it was definitely one of my favorite things. So it kind of falls in with a favorite moment, but also a tournament experience. But if I had to put you on the spot, no gun to your head, but like you think I might have when I'm hiding, and I ask you, what was the best deck that you saw this year? What are you going to say?
I saw this year. I mean, I kind of just want to say the deck that Winnie and I played for Nats, like it felt like the right deck for the right time. Felt a little underrated by people going into it, and I feel like it's properly rated now. It's powerful deck. I think if you play the Nationals tournament out 10 times over, like multiple universes, etc., I don't think it always wins it, but I think it does pretty well at it. And I think it was a good deck for the tournament, and I think it gave you the tools you needed to fight. And I'm happy about it. I'm really I'm really pleased with how that deck turned out.
I want to bring up probably 2 or 3 decks here just quickly. I am still a huge fan of the GoldenEye deck that Justin was piloting a lot throughout the year. I think I first saw it at the Classic Weekend in that tournament, on Saturday or whatever, where we played Type 1. And then, throughout the year, there was different times he would play that, and it felt like it was a deck that could adapt to different things and whatnot. And I don't know necessarily what he played at Nationals. I think he checked in multiple decks. I'm not 100% sure, but I thought that the creativity of that one and trying to leverage those add to battle dominance and things, I thought that was a pretty cool and unique deck throughout the year. Yeah. I also really liked that we had Jared on after he had won. Kind of came out of nowhere, like not really expected to do well, but then he had the Thieves deck mixed with the Disciples or whatever. And I think that, I don't know, part of me is struggling, like it was a purple deck mostly, right? Like, so he was playing purple Disciples?
No, yeah, it was purple, yeah. Yeah.
Like, I feel like it was purple and crimson, but obviously it's kind of the nuances and the exact, I guess, cards within the deck is not as familiar or as fresh on my mind. But I remember the thoughts that I had about the deck, and it was really cool to see him take something that looked like a gimmick deck, and then he was like, "No, I'm gonna do well." And he was playing Jeremy in that finals, and I thought Jeremy was gonna mop the floor with him. I'm not gonna lie, like I thought Jeremy was gonna. He was just going to come out and do what Jeremy does. And the way he just like bashed him over the head and just kept going. And I think it ended up being like a 5-0 or 5-1. I want to say it was a 5-0. But I really thought that. And then talking to him afterwards, like we did an interview with him about the deck, had him on the podcast, like just the thoughts that he put into each card. Like he had a reasoning for the card being in the deck, even though other people might not like it. He was like, I like it because of this. And then he was able to put it in a deck and play it a way that leveraged the reason that he liked it. He was able to leverage those reasons and make that card valuable where other people saw less value in them. And there was a couple of cards in there like that. And I thought it was just a really cool thing. But I want to say, and I hate to give them credit. I do hate to give you credit here, but I'm going to give you credit. Sean and Brandon, having the Babylonian merchants be able to capture when they search in teams was insane. That was cool. Such a good, like, I don't even know if you say that's a meta call, because Brandon was going to play those because that's just what he likes to play anyway. So I don't want to take it away from him, though. But the fact that they were able to leverage him playing what he wanted to play and then turn it into like, okay, we're going to build the decks to work around that. And then they did well. They kicked our butt all tournament season, and they got to Nationals, and they did it again. Like, whatever. I'll take it on the cheek. That's fine. But it was so cool getting to see those guys. And that's another thing, like, you talk about improved players. Sean's always been a good player, but Brandon's, relatively new to the game and constantly going through learning and, over the last couple of years, seeing, how he's progressed with that, and then being able to see him go up and get his name called for winning first place there with Sean in teams. I think that was a really cool moment, getting to see that and knowing what that meant for each one of those guys. That was pretty cool. But definitely their team's decks being willing to think outside the box and play Babylonian merchants, I think was hats off to them. That's all I can say.
That was awesome. They did great. Yeah.
So last question about year in review, and then we'll tackle a couple of looking to the future things, and then we'll wrap this thing up. But new cards that came in, that was Israel's Inheritance and promos and things. Again, because we're doing calendar year, those had released at Nationals. So I kind of want to take this, and it can kind of blend with looking to the future. But what we were dealing with, Israel's Rebellion, Roots coming out, some of the promos that happened, Glory of the Lord and all of that. And now you have, I just realized I put year in review on here. Israel's Inheritance, but I wanted to talk about like I don't know, the expectation and the thoughts around Israel's Rebellion as the main set leading into Nationals, and then the new release of Israel's Inheritance. Kind of compare those, and then what do you think that those cards provide to the game on their own, and then also together, because they are part of a quote unquote block set.
So we're talking about I and IR, comparing them and how they can relate to each other and how they relate to the game as a whole.
Yeah, mostly comparing like their release and like the thought around the release, because I know that I feel like people were bummed a little bit when Israel's Rebellion came out. They weren't as excited as they are for Israel's Inheritance. I think it's night and day more excited.
Yeah. Obviously they were trying to tone back some of the power and the wordiness on cards, and Israel's Rebellion may have done that a little too much. It was a little bit underpowered, and while it isn't a block with the other cards, it doesn't have a ton of crossover in terms of synergies with Israel's Inheritance. Israel's Inheritance, on the other hand, it looks like not necessarily a return to GOC levels, but it's close. It's closer. And it's got a few cards that are just straight up amazing, like, oh yeah, Victorious Being, always playing that card. If it fits my deck, I'm always playing that card. That card's amazing. So it's got a lot of really good cards. The Moabites, the Canaanites seem to be doing really well. And there's just lots of good other cards scattered through. Snatch Spear is amazing. Abishai is really cool. The Warriors seem to be very interesting. Lots of just different little things you can do. And I'm excited to see Joshua and Thieves working out. Disoriented Soul is amazing. So just a ton of really good things. I think IR did a really good job of toning up the power a little bit. I wish it had a little bit more synergy with... I did a job of toning the power, but I wish I had a little bit more synergy with IR, because it feels like just some of the themes from IR just don't have... They're kind of stuck in a no man's land of like, they need a few more cards to finish off their design, but they're not going to go back to... They're not going to print any more Brown Wilderness cards unless there's a promo. They're not going to print any more of Pale Green Egyptians unless there's a promo like Queen, which Queen's an amazing card, but yeah.
Does Rebellion feel a little bit like, so the block set of Christ or whatever, also technically I believe includes Fall of Man to tell the whole story. Fall of Man, Prophecy of Christ, Lineage of Christ, Gospel of Christ. That's a block set, quote unquote.
I thought it was just of Christ. So you think Fall of Man's included too?
I'm pretty sure Fall of Man was included in the thought process for that.
Okay.
Someone can tell me if we're wrong on the history of the game. It keeps coming back to that. We got to figure out the history, man. But Israel's Rebellion feels a lot like Fall of Man, to where like it introduces some things, but if they weren't set up for the best level of success, and then they're just kind of sitting there isolated until they get touched again.
Yeah.
And I feel like I draw comparisons to both of those sets. Like they're almost like the odd set out. Like they just didn't get enough or give enough to get a lot of love, and they're just kind of space fillers. And I don't want to say that, because I know the design team works hard to put these sets out, and like nobody puts a set out thinking, oh, well, this is going to just fill a space. It's going to check the box for our yearly release or whatever. So I don't want to say that in a negative way like that, but I really do feel like in essence, it just feels like it's filling a space, and it doesn't excite me as a player to want to build decks out of it as much as other sets that are tied to kind of the same thing. So there's not a lot of, like, it's not a big block or anything that we're doing here, but Israel's Inheritance feels like night and day, like give me that a million times before IR. And I know that this goes in line with that article. And I know we didn't do like recent news and happenings or whatever, because we wanted to focus on year-end review here, but on Land of Redemption, there was an article by Tyler talking about what he had learned in card designs, lead set design or whatever over the time that he's been in that position. And so obviously it's a learning curve and things. And so I'm not trying to knock him. I'm just from an analytical, like analyzing it and looking at, where we are in the snapshot of this is where we are in this moment in time. I feel like Israel's Inheritance has like I don't know, like reset the market expectations for like what the next set's gonna be.
Yeah.
I believe that like there was when I was getting pushed, I was like, let me see the set as a whole, because I felt like Israel's Rebellion left that bad taste in my mouth. But Israel's Inheritance is great.
Yeah.
I really do think that, like, even though like Purple Warriors, you know, like I know that there's more room for them to get things in the future. I feel like they could have been a little bit stronger, but there's strong enough cards in the set. There's enough modifiers, I think, to make a difference over Israel's Rebellion. And now for the next set, I have expectations and excited expectations versus, you know, like cautious optimism. You know, like, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, but I want to see it first. Like now I'm just like, give me the new set because I think it's going to be building on what we've got here.
Now, you got me thinking, this is a crazy idea, and probably it's stupid, but what if they took a break off from their normal like set like release obviously every year they release a set, at least ideally. But what if they took a break from their themed set releases and every 3 or 4 years gave a medley set that's broad over the whole Bible, and they can actually target
Bro,
themes.
don't even start with me.
Think about that. They can target themes that are missing some cards. Like they say, oh, we're going to add a few more Egyptians in here. We're going to add a few more wilderness evil characters.
I personally want to see more sets like that in general. Like sprinkle these cards, these themes, instead of like every year here, because you dedicate so much to a theme, and then when that theme isn't as competitive, like that, you're taking a huge block of that set, and it's a wash. At least for now, until, you know, maybe we come back to it with something down the road. You know, like all of the wilderness stuff you're talking about is kind of just stuck in motion. It's just it's there. You can play it, but it's not going to get any more until like you focus
until they
on
release
like
a
what does it
promo,
need.
or they release
I would rather see like 3 or 4 cards dropped in for each theme over the cross or across a set versus we're going to build out this entire, because that puts a lot of pressure on set design too. Like the team has to come up with exactly what this theme's going to do and put it all together and release it, and expect those cards to be, you know, at least on level to be played with other things that are meta relevant. And it's hard to do that without pushing the power level.
Yeah.
If you don't want to push the power level, just start dropping in little cards here and there.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting.
Maybe do that as like a holiday 10 thing.
Yeah. No, that would be amazing.
Maybe bring that,
really
have your
idea.
normal set, and then have like each year around Christmas time or in the fall, have a release of these like special releases that are a smaller set, you know, like it's, you know, 36 cards versus 200, or, you know, what is it, 129, I mean. It's just like a random small clip of cards that are designed to kind of bridge the gap on some themes.
That's a great idea.
We are down a big rabbit trail here. So let me ask you about your expectations for the new year. And, you know, if you look at this, I've got this listed, and then under it is, you know, like the tournament scene. Nationals is going to be in Arkansas. Expectations for the new set. So just, you can kind of blend that all together as we're getting to the end of this episode. I don't want to take forever on these, but what is your expectations overall for the next year? And you can include, you know, personal things. You can talk about podcast things if you want. Just what do you think this next year is going to look like?
So I'll start with the personal, because that's the foundation for everything else going into this. I have some really cool news. Wife and I are pregnant.
Oh, man.
We have a baby boy on the way. So, God willing, if the pregnancy continues healthily, June 15th, we should have a baby boy here, and hopefully I'll be able to teach him redemption someday. But more importantly, I want to teach him about the Redeemer. So there's that. But like that's going to color this year. Obviously, Nationals in Arkansas is something I'd love to meet, but like when it was at the end of July, so I don't know if that's going to be likely with the baby there, but we'll see. I don't know. But my expectations are it's going to be a fun year, a busy year. I'd like to have move me and my wife into a house. I got a new job a few months back, and that's going well. So it's just been very busy. It's been blessed. When Jesus says he gives us abundant life, it's definitely an abundant life I'm living. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of challenges, a lot of trials, a lot of amazing things happening all at once, and I'm just blessed that God's allowed me to take part in this and enjoy this life that He's given me and share the good news with people. So I'm looking forward to glorifying God this year. I do want to be playing some Redemption, like even if it's just on Lackey and Zoom. But I'd love to make any tournaments I can. I don't know if Nationals is going to work with the baby being around just then, but we'll see. The point is, I know I don't know much about the future, but I know it's going to be good. I know God's going to bless me. So, but I'm super excited for y'all to have Nationals if I can't make it. The next set, I've heard some things about it, but not a ton. So I'm kind of like, ooh, I'll see. I'll leave it as a big surprise coming up. But I'm really excited for that. I love getting to talk with some of the testers about it. I'm not a tester for the new set, but sometimes they give me files to help them format them for Lackey and stuff. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm excited to see what Redemption has this year. And in a personal life, I got a whole lot of things that God's been blessing with. So it's going to be an exciting year for sure. Exciting is the name of the year.
That's the obviously you've held this in for a while, but is that the first time you've publicly shared?
This is the first for public Redemption sharing. We shared it on Facebook as a family, me and my wife, but I don't think anybody in Redemption relates to me on Facebook yet. And if you want to talk to me on Facebook, feel free to send me a direct message. I can link you to my Facebook. But yeah.
Well, I think congratulations is in order.
Thank you.
Obviously, there are prayers are definitely accepted on that front because there are so many things that can go wrong, and you know, as a community, we've experienced that as well. So it's one of those things to where you're definitely excited, but you're prayerfully excited. You want to continue to. I
totally get it. Like we know that it's a sin marred world and things can go not the way that we want them, but we know that God is faithful. He will never leave us. He'll never forsake us. And in the midst of those trials is when we get to see our faith grow, and we get to band together with brothers and sisters in Christ. So like, that's one of the things me and my wife are talking about. We know that tragedy can happen anytime, and even once the child is born, tragedy can happen. Right? You have kids, and you know, like any day there could be something that goes wrong, but by God's grace, it hasn't happened yet. And if it continues, like hopefully we just pray for health and security for the children we have, and we know that God is faithful and He will support us in any situation that we go to. So we know that we're not the ones that are sovereign over the world. God is sovereign. So we just rest in that.
Yep. Well said. So as far as expectations for the new year from my side, I guess I want to focus more on the Redemption side of it because I don't know. I don't have, like, obviously I don't have anything big coming up like that. Like I don't, like my wife's not pregnant. I don't know that my life is going to definitely have this at any point. So it's hard for me to, obviously, I'm hoping to, you know, have it be a relatively tame year. Like I'm hoping not anything crazy happens, because my wife and I do have a goal of trying to work ourselves debt free, except for like our mortgage and things. So then we could potentially move into a bigger house where I'm not recording podcast in a closet. That would be nice. But I'm not trying to be ungrateful about the fact that I have, you know, a spot in my house currently. So, you know, like we have goals and things, but we'll just slowly work on them and not have such an expectation that like we're disappointed if something doesn't work out. But anyway, so I don't have any big things that I'm expecting to happen. So I'll focus more on the Redemption side of it and say that I am looking forward to potentially getting the podcast back on regular bi-weekly releases. And I do want to, I guess, have the podcast be more involved with up to the moment, instead of kind of an afterthought. Like I feel like sometimes I don't know, like get busy at work or whatever, and then have the podcast come out and maybe the energy on episodes is not as great. So I want to focus on trying to be a little bit more engaged with the podcast this year. that's what I want to do. I don't know that it will happen, but I would like to see that in 2025. But then doing that, also being engaged with the podcast means I'm more engaged with the community as well. I want to do that. I want to potentially get back to the idea of maybe every now and then being able to do like a live recording to where we got 30 minutes, we hop on, we're just chatting it up. It's nothing that requires editing afterwards. We live stream it. People can come on, drop comments in, maybe have some people join us, whatever. Just get that. I want to bring guests back. Like we have intentionally excluded them. It's just hard to get a bunch of schedules to align and things when we're not consistently recording. So hopefully the podcast remains a prominent community staple. Now, as far as tournament scene, I do believe that I'm probably going to travel a little bit less this year. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm not sure what the tournament season is going to look like. But I'm super excited that we know that Nationals is going to be in Arkansas. I know for people like you, where you still, it doesn't give you any kind of clarity knowing it at this point. But I feel like there's a lot of people knowing it now helps them plan around, know about it, gets it on their radar, on their calendar, gets it on their wife's calendar so that she can see it and she knows about it. It's just, instead of waiting till, end of January or something and finding out about it, to already know where it's going to be, know that there's going to be potential lodging there, some other details that we already know. And obviously details will get, hammered out as it happens in time. But I think Nationals in Arkansas could be, I think it's a good thing to have expectations that are higher than, just maintaining status quo. I think Nationals in Arkansas would be a great place for us to shoot for a goal of having 100 players for Type 1. I don't think that's too far away. And I believe having the information up front and plenty of time to plan for it. And I think shooting for that, and I think having an expectation and a goal is important for us as a community. And I think that obviously I'm not involved with the people hosting that, but anything that they would need from my end that I could help, sharing details and things on the podcast or whatever, I would be more than willing to help do that. But I think just setting a goal and having something to shoot for like that. And I think that it would be great for us to do that this year, because I think that it is an attainable goal.
I've trained, let's go.
And then as far as like, where that would fit in, like, obviously that's probably not going to register that high on the history of Redemption. I believe that they've broken that a few times before, but since I've been in the game the last 5 years, we have not crossed that plateau or whatever, that mark of 100 people. And I think that would be really, really awesome to do. I think the new set also, and I think Tyler having that article come out and be open and honest about, he was learning as he went, mistakes were made, lessons have been learned. And I think that, and the openness to share that and be willing to share that, and the fact that he does all that he does to push, Redemption and be engaging with the community and whatever in his elder role is definitely important for the game. And I think now we know he's getting married this year, so I don't know how that will affect his time and whatnot. But I think that, the expectation for the new set being high as well. I think it's okay to be excited. Like I mentioned last year or this past year, nervously excited or cautiously excited about what the new set was going to be like. I want to not worry about that and just be excited about the new set. And I think we're at a point to where we can almost do that, to where we know it's going to be something good. And I know that there's a lot of hard work that goes into that. And I want to approach it with just open excitedness and not have to worry about, am I going to be disappointed because the blue stuff that came out in IR really isn't that great when you compare it to other stuff. Just leave all that disappointment behind and move forward with, okay, excited, new year, everything. And there's no strings attached to the excitement. It's just here we are, all gas and no brakes. I used to say it all the time. I don't think I said it that much last year, but it'd be nice to bring back all gas and no brakes. We'd like to fuel up that.
Here comes that hype train again.
bring the hype train back, you know? I think that would be awesome. So I guess I am good with the questions that I had here, the things that I wanted to talk about. Do you have anything that you want to share with the people before we dismiss them from this episode?
Yeah, we're moving into 2025. Just hope that we're all looking to grow spiritually, grow sharing the gospel, sharing this game with people. Obviously, that's not as important as the gospel, but just, hey, it's another way to bridge the subject. I know lots of people who play the game who are not Christians, and we can share the good news when we're playing some games and having fun with each other. And just looking forward to a good year of glorifying God, growing to know Him more and more, and just enjoy this life that He's given us, and weep with those who are weeping and rejoice with those who are rejoicing, and have an awesome year. That's what I'd say.
I think that is a good way to put it there. Because even though you have good expectations, we can't control the variables in this life. And thankfully, we do know who controls most of the things. Obviously our choices and the consequences of our choices are sometimes our own demise and our own downfall. So if we can get out of our own way, and we can continue to honor God in things, I think in the context of our own personal lives and this game, I think we'll all see, tremendous blessings in the new year. Yep. And I am excited for that. I'm excited to be excited about the game again. And just what the new year, like the possibilities that it can be. And I think we're getting really close to the point to where, there's been a little bit of a mire the last couple of years with GOC, and then the power level being cut of cards afterwards. So GOC is always at the top. Just, I'm ready for new dynamic storylines so that we can quit repeating the same things over and over. Let's just, no trepidation. Let's just head in full excited and see what the New Year's has. And that's what I'm looking forward to here.
2025, the best year redemption ever. The year that John won Nats, and
I'm okay
that was a great year. The best set was released.
We're celebrating the 30th year, even though it's not the 30th national tournament we're building to. It'll be the 31st, but we are doing we are going through the 30th year of redemption. I don't know exactly how well you can celebrate that, because I guess when the national tournament happens, you go from now it's not year 30 to now it's year 31. Yeah. But
that's funny.
We are there, and that is cool. So I will stop rambling. I'll stop. And with that, we're out. Peace.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Threshing Floor Podcast. Help us grow our community by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're at it, be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss the next episode. And we'll talk to you next time on the Threshing Floor Podcast.